Thank you, Angela. My voice is shot from last night. You know, when you worship your face off for 3 hours, that happens. And 3-hour rehearsal before that. So, anybody else a little scratchy today? We did, Tim was like, I think we overshot the landing. We probably should have cut about 4 songs. That would have been about perfect. But, you know, he's also not a music guy. I was like, I'm just saying. He's got a lot of people left. I was like, define a lot. 20? It's okay. It's all right. We're going to be okay with that. But it was a great night. Wasn't yesterday amazing? If you enjoyed it, let us know. Come on. Or did you enjoy it? I'm going to tell you what was the most impactful was the kids up front. The Fuse kids. Basically they led the room, you know. They are, it wasn't a Fuse worship night, but if you looked at the first, like from here to probably the second row, that's what it looked like from our vantage point up here. And so then I had to keep looking past them to see, are there any adults in the room? Did we put out the memo that this was a Fuse worship night? And then I thought, what a great problem, not a problem. What a great thought that these teenagers are so excited. I even saw, like, there was this whole section of middle school boys over here worshiping. And I mean, worshiping, just heartfelt, really beautiful. And I have had 3 different middle school boys in my home that I have raised. And I'm going to tell you, I don't think they were that abandoned at that age. And there's just not very much of that this day and age. So I saw many of your kids out there. It was as impactful for us up here as it was for you in the room. Of course, that's how God works. I don't know if you were here yesterday morning or if you heard, but we baptized 100 people yesterday morning. So we don't overlook that goodness. We know that God is moving and working, and this was not just kids or teenagers. It was adults. It was women. It was men. It was, single women. It was couples that are dating, couples that are married. It was moms and dads and moms and daughters and fathers and sons. There was all kinds. There was even one man who was in his 70s and knew that his 3 grandchildren were being baptized and decided he was going to rededicate his life and jump in and get baptized right behind them. That was beautiful, wasn't it? It was amazing. It was amazing. And it's so quick. We have to keep it moving. We don't have time to what I want to do is have everybody just sit down and tell us your whole story. We want to know everything, right? You want to just sit in that moment with them. And so the fact that we got to witness that yesterday, if you were here for only one service, you saw 50. In the next service, there was 50. We capped it online because we knew we didn't have time for more than that. And it filled up. And so we have never seen that before at Genesis Metro, and how beautiful that we get to say things like that God is moving in a way that we've never seen, and we get to be a part of it. And that's what we are thrilled about as we are in this season. So tonight, as we continue the legacy of yes, tonight is a yes that keeps going. We're talking about Ruth. If you were here last week, then you're caught up. If you weren't here and you're like, I don't know, I can be at night 2. Of course you can. They can all stand alone and you can get something from all of them. So if you're on vacation the rest of the summer and you're only going to make it to the last one, it's okay. Still come, still show up. You can catch everything online. If you're registered, you are receiving all the links to all the videos and all the studies, so you can jump in and out as much as you can this summer. That we created it that way. But just to catch us up from last week, we got almost through chapter 1. We got all the way from Ruth 1 through 17, essentially. And we talked about, all the deaths. So you have Naomi. Let's refresh ourselves on the characters. You have Naomi, who is the matriarch. And her husband, I think Elimelech. Is that how you would say it? Elimelech. I'm sure I sound like a Southern girl from Louisiana to somebody that really knows how to say that. But Elimelech, he's the husband, matriarch, patriarch, Naomi and Elimelech. And then they had 2 sons, Mahlon and Chilion. I did look those up. And then they had wives, Ruth and Orpah. There you go. And who is named after her? Do you remember? Oprah, right. They got it wrong on the birth certificate. Fun fact. So, not that we need to know about Oprah, but, I just always remember that about that name. So what happens in our story right at the beginning is that Ruth is the central character. Of course, the book is named after Ruth, and she's the central figure to this story. Naomi, of course, has a lot to do with it, especially in this chapter. What we learn is sometime before the boys got married, her husband died. And so then the guys get married. Now, they had all started there from Bethlehem, which, Katrina, I'm going to throw a curveball at you. If you want to try to pull the map up from last week while I'm talking, just so they can see it again. See, this is not planned. Katrina, let's give our media crew a hand. Yes. They deal with all the curveballs that we throw at them. You won't really know their names. They hide. They like the computers, kind of covers up their faces, especially if they're short. They can just get like this when something goes wrong. But what we learned last week, we saw a map of the difference between Bethlehem, where this family was from, where they originated. Thank you so much. Way to go, Katrina. Right over here to the west, I have to think about it for a minute, of the Dead Sea. You see Bethlehem is up there just by Jerusalem. And then all the way over, the red line from Bethlehem goes all the way over to Moab, which is where they are now. So a famine forced them out of Bethlehem, around the north of the Dead Sea, and now they've settled in Moab. So by the time they get all the way to Moab, it's about a 7 to 10 day journey walking, all right? About 50 miles, but it would take them some time. And of course, you can see it's mountainous region, so it wouldn't have been a super easy journey, but we don't even have time to get all into that, right? It's just a fact we have to file away and the context and the landscape of this story. So, all right, you can be done with the map. So I would say once she got married, she loses her husband, and then the boys get married after that. Okay, the boys get married to these Moabite women, of course, because they're in Moab, right? So, if you moved to California, your kids would probably find, and they grew up there, your kids would find spouses where you were, most likely, right? Where they grew up. So the same happens then. We can relate to scripture all day long. So they get married, and it's Ruth and Orpah now enter, and we said, thank God for daughters-in-law, because what would boy moms do without them? They finally get a dose of girldom whenever they finally get married. And here she is, Naomi, a widow, and now a mother-in-law, and then both sons die. And we're only told that. Then both sons died. And you want to go, what happened? Did they both get COVID? Like what happened? Did they die at the same time? Was it a separate year? How did that happen? But we don't know. But now she is a widow, and both of her daughters-in-law are widows. They're all widows, widowed women. And here they are. And she decides, she hears that the famine is over back home. I don't have any reason to stay here. There is no reason for me to stay. I'm going back home. Perfectly fine. So they start out. And it describes the scenes of weeping and sadness, which I described as like a Little Women / Pride and Prejudice, sort of like, all the girls in that family, and the mom is like a fainting couch. There's just a lot of weeping, and rightly so. There's a lot of grief to navigate. And they start out, and sometime on the journey through the northern mountains of Moab, she's like, hey, you do not have to go back with me. Why don't you stay here? You're already home. You don't need to go with me. And they say, no, we want to go with you. And they're crying and crying. It says they're kissing her and they're weeping loudly, uncontrollably. That's a descriptive. I like the emotional description of the women's state, but like what happened to the men? Give us that. Anyway, I digress. Things I'm going to ask when I get there. So they continue on, and then she stops again. She's like, really, you don't need to go with me. So Orpah's like, you know what? I am going to stay home. And I don't know if I said this last week, but as I was diving a little bit more, I've always sort of judged her for that decision. I don't know. I've known this story for a long time. I've read it, I guess, my whole life. I don't know. I feel like I've known this story, and I feel like I've known it pretty well until, of course, I start diving in to teach it, and then you find all sorts of things. But I don't see anywhere that Orpah is in some sort of bad standing with God or that she's in disobedience because she decided to stay. She was given an option, just a neutral option. You can make the choice. You don't have to go back with me. She's like, you know what? I am going to stay. And then what we see is her crying and weeping again because she's going to have to be separated from her sister-in-law and her mother-in-law, who clearly they've developed a very close relationship. And so then we see all this weeping, and she goes home, she stays home, and Ruth and Naomi set out on their way. And this is where, once Orpah's gone, this is where we have the famous verses that say, Ruth looks at her in the eye and says, where you go, I will go. Where you stay, I will stay. Your people will be my people, and your God, my God. Please do not make me go back. I'm with you. And it says, Naomi dropped it. Let's go. So that's where we ended last week. That catches you up to where we are this week as we talk about, yes, the legacy of yes, but the yes that keeps on going. So we're going to dive right in. Ruth 1, we're going to finish up Ruth 1. And I'm going to tell you, there's so much in these. I got through 7 verses of chapter 2. So we're not going to get very far. I don't know how I'm going to wrap this up in 5 weeks. We'll see. We have to do an A and B. So Ruth chapter 1, let's just read these 19 through 22. Let's finish this up, and then we're going to unpack it a little bit. All right, verse 19. The two of them traveled until they came to Bethlehem. All right, so now remember they're going back home. So 7 to 10 days just summarized in one half of a verse. They traveled all the way back home to Bethlehem. When they entered Bethlehem, the whole town was excited. Like they're home, okay? Like their neighborhood. Like if you moved away and you came back and you moved in your same neighborhood, would your people be excited to see you again? Or your kids' friends at school, oh, they're back home. And somebody said, could this be Naomi? And here's Naomi. Now, remember, she's a little bitter Betty. Sorry if anybody's named Betty. She's a little bitter. We talked about this last week. This is where we really see it, okay? She's like, don't call me Naomi. Call me Mara. What does that mean? For the Almighty has made me very bitter. When you look up the word Mara, it means bitterness. So she's like, my name is bitter. She basically said, I've changed my name to bitter. Do you like that? That's so positive. Poor Naomi. She keeps going, I went away full, but the Lord, okay, first of all, just count how many times she blames God. Go back to 20. The Almighty has made me very bitter. That's 1. Number 2, I went away full, but the Lord, 2, has brought me back empty. Why do you call me Naomi, since the Lord has opposed me? 3. And the Almighty, 4, has afflicted me. That means cursed. That's what that word means. God has cursed me. 4 times she blames God right there, okay? Just keep count of that, tuck it away. So Naomi came back from Moab, the territory of Moab, with her daughter-in-law Ruth, the Moabitess. They arrived in Bethlehem at the beginning of the barley harvest. All right, number 1, the yes to show up. Have you ever had to go somewhere you did not want to go? Anybody? Does anybody have one of those shirts that says, sorry, I'm late, I didn't really want to be here? Have you seen those? Or like, there's too much peopling out here. We see that one a lot too. I feel like all of those started popping up during COVID because it was like, oh, I'm home. Oh, I have to go out and like get dressed and talk to people. I don't even know how to do that anymore. Right? So some of us are not people, and the whole idea of showing up anywhere social is like you are already planning your exit strategy. When Jordan got married to Kennedy, his wife, her dad, who they go here, Doug, Bud and Crystal, he kind of looked at me and said, listen, I know we're marrying into this pastor social family, but we are the Irish goodbye people. So we're just going to jet. You're going to know we left. Don't take offense. It's just kind of who we are. We showed up. You're welcome. All right. We enjoyed it for a few minutes and we're going to go home. So that's okay. Right. All right. We all understand. But have you ever been somewhere you didn't really want to be? What about if you've been in a season where you were in kind of a depression? Take the joking out, but it was a dark place. It was difficult to navigate just going to work every day. And then you have to show up, let's say, like to church or to like a meeting at the school or, a neighborhood gathering or something like your spouse that's a people person put this thing on your calendar and you didn't want to go to it anyway. But now you kind of have to force yourself out of it. Have you experienced the thing that happens where you do force yourself into it? And it's actually a good thing for you. It actually ends up sort of nudging you out of that space that you're in that you can't get out of. It pushes you out of this little rut that you're in. You know, it's almost like a tow truck showed up to pull you out of the mud, right? So it's the yes to show up even when you don't feel like it. But let's talk about the yes to saying, like, even though everything's new, right? So here they are in the middle of this place. It's a new country. I mean, it's not brand new for Naomi, but it's new-ish, right? She's left for at least a couple of decades, I'm going to guess, somewhere in there between 10 and 20 years. And now she's back, so people have grown up, people have changed. You know how it goes. People are married, now they've got kids, or people have passed away as she's experienced. Things are new. New people, new country, new all the things. And they're here. It's new, but they showed up. And then you have the yes that will show up even though, like I just said, you're bitter and you're blaming, right? And you really don't want to be here, but you said yes anyway. And sometimes that's good for us. Sometimes we need that. And honestly, like this is one of those things in life that I feel like is so good for us to, it's counterintuitive. Like I don't feel like it. My throat kind of hurts. You know, like when your kid calls you. Now, when your kid gets older, calls you. Some of y'all are like, my kid's 3, no way. But eventually, they'll have a phone. I recommend as late as possible, but this is not a parenting seminar. I have lots and lots and lots of opinions and strategies about how parenting works well. You could just call me offline or email me, info@genesismentor.org. I'd be happy to talk you through it. But all I'm saying is, as late as possible, at some point they're going to call you, and then at high school they start going, I'm not feeling very good today. And they kind of like make their voice sound like this. Have you ever been at work and gotten this phone call? You're like, oh, what are your symptoms? Okay, what's going on? It's like, oh, my throat kind of hurts. Okay. And I think I have a fever. Okay, why don't you go check it really quick? They come back. It's 99.1. You're like, well, that's not really a fever. So have you been out of the bed for 20 minutes or not? I'm always like, has 20 minutes passed since you took your fever? Well, then we don't have a fever, right? They start making things up of why they can't possibly go somewhere, okay? This definitely will begin to happen. You will have this idea that they're ill or they're sick, but I'm going to tell you right now, most of the time they're not. But your kids, you know, they'll suck you right into that. When we think about Naomi and where she's sitting, she's got legitimate grief, right? This is not, if you've experienced loss of any kind, if you've experienced loss in the form of losing parents or losing a spouse, whether it's through death, whether it's an affair, whether it's a divorce, whatever it is, that's a loss. If you have experienced job loss where it broke your heart for them to let you go and give you a severance package because you had poured your life into this place you never imagined you'd be the one that let go. You know what loss feels like. If you've been in a situation where you've been abused or you've been taken advantage of by someone that you trusted, that's a loss that you're experiencing. And sometimes we don't deal with those things until we're at this age, this stage of the game, especially Gen X and above. I would say no one was making sure that our things were taken care of, but all that stuff starts coming out in adulthood. So if you've experienced a loss, you might be sitting where Naomi is saying, just call me bitter. I'm going to change my name tag. So it just prints out bitter. That's my name, right? Well, let's look at what the Bible has to say about it. I want you to see a couple of contrasting verses. Now, sometimes I like to have my actual Bible, but in a situation like this, you might have your app. So you're going to get ready. You're either going to flip to it or you're going to look it up in your app, all right? Whatever thing you have, I want you to look up Hebrews 12:15. Hebrews 12:15. And when you get there, I want you to highlight it. You know how to do that. You just click on the 12, and then it'll like underline it, and then you click a color, whatever color you'd like, to highlight it. Maybe some of you really organized people have a system. Oh, yellow means I'm coming back to this. Pink means it's God's words alone. Blue means, I don't know. I don't have that, but some people do. Some people are organized people. I wish I was, but it's time for me to admit I'm not really. All right, Hebrews 12:15, do you have it? This is what it says. Make sure that no one falls short of the grace of God, and that no root of bitterness springs up, causing trouble and defiling many. Okay? So you have that one. Now, either keep your hand there or just click over on your app to Deuteronomy 29:18. Deuteronomy 29:18. Look up when you're ready, so I know you got it. Oh, wait. Deuteronomy is in the beginning of the Old Testament, almost one of the very first books. You know what? I'm flipping all the way around. I need to be mindful of that. All the way almost back to the beginning. So it's going to look like you're at the front of the book. It's like the first 5 books. So Deuteronomy 29:18. This is what it says. Make sure there is no man or woman, clan or tribe among you today whose heart turns away from the Lord our God to go and worship the gods of those nations, other nations. And make sure there is no root among you that produces such bitter poison. Okay. Well, what are the similarities in these two? So if you have your Bible, I want you to just sort of flip over and keep those two so you can get to them easily, or you're going to have to flip back and forth in your app, or you're like, I don't have to do that. I wrote it down. That's fine too. Whatever you want to do. Hebrews 12:15, look at it again. It says, make sure that no one falls short of the grace of God, and basically that no root of bitterness springs up. Meaning, be sure in your influence and your spheres and your impact in this world that people around you, they should not pass away not having known they have an opportunity for the grace of God. So anyone that knows you, if you know God, your job is to be sure they know how to get to Christ. Did you know that? That's your job. That is our job. That is each individual's job. There it is right there, very, very, very clear in Scripture. Make sure that nobody misses that. But make sure also that no root of bitterness springs up, causing trouble and defiling many. So that whole phrase, causing trouble and defiling many, if you go back to Deuteronomy 29:18, when it says, make sure at the very end there is no root among you that produces bitter poison, that is the same word. Poison is like hemlock or wormwood, is what they would call that. So the defiling many is poisoning people. Does that make sense? And then we see it's the same word as the poison here mentioned in Deuteronomy. What that tells us is bitterness is poisonous and it destroys things that it touches. Bitterness is poisonous and it will be destructive. So when we can look at Naomi, that gives us more of a context of, we can be understanding and empathetic and sympathetic about where she's sitting and feel all kinds of compassion for the grief that she's in. But the Bible is clear in the Old and the New Testament that we're not allowed to stay there. Because what happens is bitterness then becomes, as it mentions, both of them mention the word root, which means it's going to build like a tunnel down inside of you and build a root system. Imagine a tree, right? If I go look at the tree in our front yard, the root system goes all the way to the neighbor's yard, right? So that root system is going to grow down in there, create these roots and these spindles, and it's poisoning you at the same time. And the work it's going to take to get that out is going to be long and arduous. It is not going to be an easy task. So we could just hang out here and we could see that Naomi needs some hope, right? She needs a way out of this. So let's not find ourselves in so much compassion that we excuse it like it is something we could also take on. Sometimes we're reading Bible stories for the idea of moving past something, learning from a behavior that we need to get rid of. And this is one of those. It's okay to be sad. Hear me say this. It is okay to be sad. It is okay to grieve loss. It is okay to get therapy and work through it. It is okay to struggle in working through it. But it is not okay to decide that will be who you are the rest of your life because you serve a God who is able to do more than anything you could ask or imagine, and that is even to heal all the pain inside of you. That's who you serve, is a God who can, and he will. Proverbs 14:10 says this, each heart knows its own bitterness, and no one else can share its joy. What an interesting verse. Which took me, of course, to the verse in James that says, count it all joy when you experience trials of many kinds, because you know the testing of your faith produces perseverance, and perseverance must finish its work so that you can be mature and complete, not lacking anything. So, wow, what a relationship between bitterness and joy, that is your thing to work on. It means that you are the one that has to own it, and you have to work on it. All right. The next thing under this first point is verse 22a. Just the very first part of 22, I want you to see this, is that the yes to show up even when people are defining you by your past. Anybody ever had that issue? Let's read it one more time. It says, so Naomi came back from the territory of Moab with her daughter-in-law, Ruth the Moabitess. Ruth the Moabitess. Like, I'm from Bossier City, Louisiana. They said, Carrie the Bossier Cityite. I don't know what you would call that. If they said, let's say you're from, where's Noel? Jersey. Anybody else from Jersey? Okay, well, do y'all know each other? See, this is what I like. You should know each other. Make sure you get a face for her. She's back there. All right, they said, this is Noelle Fody from Jersey, the lady from Jersey, you know, the lady from Jersey. You always wonder, like, what do they mean when they're saying, this is not the only time they call her this, all right? They keep calling her this, and it stuck out to me. Imagine just being known by your past, where you're from, like Moab, wrong side of the Dead Sea, you know what I'm saying? I mean, if we all start throwing out places we know in Dallas, you don't want to be alone at night, we might offend somebody, but you know, and I know where they are, right? I knew in Shreveport, Bossier, currently where the casinos sit, there was nothing down there when I was growing up. It was a bad part of town. Nobody in their sane mind would ever be caught dead down there by the river, ever, ever, ever at night. No way. But now, there's all kinds. I'm always like, I don't even know how they pulled this off. They just like pulled a fast one over on all these people hanging out down here on the river. Nobody hung out at the river, but you knew not to go there at night. You just wonder, like, when they're saying this, is it just because she's from this other place? Ruth the Moabitess, you know, she's, my mom and dad moved to North Arkansas when they were, I was in college, and the town they moved to is called Mountain View. Now, most people are like, oh, I know where that is. It's right off the White River. I'm like, well, that's actually Mountain Home. If you've been there, that's on a major like highway. Mountain View is like further into this valley system, like where, you know, like the people that were in the movie, that's where they live. That's where they moved to. You don't get into this town unless you're going to this town. It was in the middle of nothing. They had this thing in October in the fall called bathhouse races. Like Pine Derby things, but like a bathhouse, like toilets on wheels. I was like, wow, this is where y'all moved. And you know what? It's a great city. It sounds crazy, but it's a great little town. It's like the town of Mayberry, if you remember that show, the Andy Griffith show. I remember watching those as a kid on reruns, and I loved it, but that's where they moved to. But everyone that lives there, right, they're either from there or they're from off. That's what they call it. This is Wayne and Lorinda. They're from off. Well, there's nothing more welcoming than that. Put them on the connection team. Hi, is this your first Sunday? Oh, you're from off? Okay. And you're like, and they all kind of stare at each other, you know. Any small town in America, is this the way it is? Kind of, if you're from a small town, Shanna, is that true of your town? Oh yeah, that's true. There's not a lot of welcoming going on. So you sort of put the context around what you're reading. This is how I read the Bible. I don't know if y'all do. I'm like, oh, I know people that would definitely put labels on immediately with a smile on their face, and they're going to label her. But I will tell you that God says you don't have to live with that stigma or that stain the rest of your life. You can move past your past. You can move past where you came from, and you can walk in something new that he's given you. You can walk in something new that he has for you that you can't even dream of yet. Because what's getting ready to happen to her is some kind of wonderful Hollywood script that only God can write. I've been saying that lately as people text stories or we get together for lunch or coffee and they're, I got to tell you what God did. I got to tell you about this. You won't believe this. You won't believe what happened with my son. You won't believe what happened with my daughter. You won't believe what happened with my ex and his wife. It's like all of these things that you go, only God can write a story like that. You couldn't make it up if you tried. And that's what Ruth is staring down the barrel at, and she has no idea. She won't be known as Ruth the Moabitess for very much longer. All right, number 2, we're going to go on to Ruth. We made it to chapter 2. Look at us. We're doing so good. Ruth chapter 2, we're going to read 1 through 7, and then we're going to stop. I have a couple more things to say, and then we're going to move on. Now, here's where the story starts to unfold. Verse 1. Now, Naomi had a relative. This is really just an aside. Verse 1 is just background. It doesn't have to do with the flow of the story, okay? Now, Naomi had a relative on her husband's side, so Elimelech's side. He was a prominent man of noble character from Elimelech's family. His name was Boaz. You're going to remember that name. Tuck it right back there. Verse 2, Ruth the Moabitess, there it is again. I'm like, oh man, brutal. She asked Naomi, would you let me go into the fields and gather fallen grain behind someone with whom I find favor? And Naomi's like, go ahead, my daughter, that's fine. So Ruth leaves and she enters the field to gather grain behind the harvesters. She happened to be, just stop right. She happened to be. Clue, this is like a context. This is God writing a story. She didn't happen into by luck in this field, but she just happened by the providence of God. Let's just insert that right there. She happened to be in the portion of the field belonging to who? Say it again. Who is Boaz? He's a noble man. He's rich. That's all I'm like. He's a rich guy, right? He's a noble man of great character, apparently a great guy, like the unicorn prince. I mean, some other described him as like good looking. I'm like, oh, okay. He's great. He's nice. I mean, those are all the things you're looking for. If you're a single woman, you're like, yes, I'm looking for someone who's not crazy, first of all. If you have been on the dating scene in the adult world, you know what I'm talking about. I'm looking at my single friends. I have one that just says, you won't believe what happened this time. She likes to tell me all kinds of stuff to get on the dating app, off the dating app, on the dating, because you know what? They're crazy. And then after a few months, you're like, maybe I'll try again. Only to discover after 3 or 4 dates, they're still insane, right? I don't know where you're supposed to meet someone. However, maybe a Boaz will walk into your life. I heard once on a cringy Christian video, like, I'm just waiting for my Boaz. I told somebody at lunch with the pastors last time, they asked if we would ever have like acting and flags. And I don't know if she's here tonight, but she knows what I said. I said it out loud. I said, oh, no. We'll never have that. Never at Genesis Metro. She said, why? You can do it. I said, oh, well, my goal at the end of my life is that Genesis Metro is never on a cringy Christian Instagram account. That is my goal. If I can make it there and win people to Jesus, I will be super happy. Anyway, that's an aside, not meant for tonight. Crazy men, not Boaz. He's the perfect one. So Boaz, she happened into a portion of the field, so that means there's multiple owners of this field. I want you to see the granular details. She happened into a portion of the field. I wish we knew. Was it an acre? By the way, our property is 12 acres, just to give you an idea. I don't know how big a field was. I'd like to know some of those things. A portion, however it happened, if it was half an acre, if it was 100 acres of 200 acres or whatever it was, she happened to step on to a field that belonged to Boaz, who was single and ready to mingle, all right? Verse 3, later, when Boaz gets into town, you knew it was coming. This is what they call in the movies the meet cute. Do you know that? Oh, here's Boaz. Now, I imagine if he's the perfect guy, which he is set up to be, that he's also a really nice boss. Everybody likes when he shows up. Nobody is like, oh no, the boss is here, scrambling, make sure it looks like, oh yeah, we keep things clean when you're not here, or yeah, we get a lot done. Look at all these bushels I gathered up today. But really, they're just like, Boaz! I just feel like it's just like, oh my gosh, he's not like a Michael Scott that everybody hates to see coming. He's a really nice guy. So that's what I imagine. If I look at the character they're trying to paint for me, I'm imagining everybody's excited he's there. So here he arrives from Bethlehem, somewhere on the outskirts of town where his fields are. And he's like, the Lord be with you. This is like a, forgive me, God, like a real Handmaid's Tale moment, you know. Peace be with you, also with you. May the Lord bear you fruit. What do they say? Praise be. Who are my Handmaid's Tale people? May the Lord open. I was once on a mission trip. Lisa already shook her head at me. Once on a mission trip, and we were experiencing a powerful worship service, and a lady comes up to Lisa Little. Now, this is about 2010, so we were so much younger then, 15 years ago, and she starts prophesying over Lisa's womb. And Lisa says, get behind me, Satan. Get your hands off me. No. This womb is closed. No, ma'am. No. Mm-mm. That's how I feel about may the Lord open. You know what? Please don't ever say that again. It's disgusting. So here's a greeting. The Lord be with you. The Lord be with you. Hello. Everybody's doing the polite nods and bows. Verse 5, right? Boaz asked his servant. Now he's standing around. He's looking around. He's here, I don't know. Maybe some people kept working. Some people stopped to say hi. But he's like, he asked the guy who's in charge of all the people that are harvesting. Now remember what it said at the end of chapter 1? It said they arrived in Bethlehem when? Just at time for harvest. They arrived just in time for harvest. So he's like, who are, he's all these people. I mean, he's like, oh, hey, come here. Come over here. Go ahead and put 6 up. He's like, well, first he says, who is that? Who is that? She's new and a hottie. Who's she belong to? And he's like, well, she's the young Moabite woman. I'm like, this girl cannot get away from this label. Her mother-in-law is bitter and she's Moabite. Here she is. She's a young Moabite woman, Moabite, you know what I'm saying, who returned with Naomi from the territory of Moab. And then he describes what she did. She came and asked, would you let me gather fallen grain? That's the leftovers, by the way, that the people that are actually pulling the grain and harvesting it off the stalk, it's the stuff that's falling onto the ground and they're getting what they want and then it's falling away because they're probably going so fast at expert level that their stuff. So she's going behind them. Can you imagine this? Like gathering up the leftovers. So the servant's now saying, this girl is something. She came and asked us, could she gather up all the fallen grain among the bundles behind the harvesters, those that were reaping the harvest? She came and started working, and she has been on her feet since early morning, except that she did rest for a little bit in the shelter. I like that. I'm like, these are the details we want. Tell us more of those. I want to know, was it 5 minutes, 10 minutes? Did she get some water? Did she take a nap? I want to know what she did, I love it. So look at this. We have so much in here. We have the yes. Let's talk about number 1, the yes that doesn't complain. You have Ruth, who is now known in this area for her work ethic. So we're going to get into that in your studies this week, but I just wanted to drop it here so you could understand. She is not averse to hard work, right? Now, I'm not going to get into a whole thing about generations that work hard and generations that don't. I'm just saying, if you try to get out of work, you probably don't have a good work ethic. If you try to think of ways to do more work and contribute to where you work and contribute to where you get your employment from, and think of ways outside the box to add value to a company, you're probably a pretty hard worker, right? So you can evaluate that for yourself. But I will tell you, the Bible has a lot to say about those that work hard and those that avoid work, and it ain't good, all right? So a pro tip for life: be a hard worker. Guess what? It won her a lot of favor. And she's not complaining about working. She's looking for a way to do more work. Now, I have a lot of questions about that, which I wrote down on a whole day for you to explore, because I knew there was no way I could get it in tonight. But number two, what I want you to see is that it's a yes that asks to do more. And this is what we're going to find as we look at her asking Naomi. Verse 2, she says, would you let me go and do this? And I see a lot of respect here. I see that she knows she needs to ask Naomi. She's essentially her daughter now, so she defers to her to what she will do. Now, I have a lot of questions. Is she bored? Does she just need something to do? Or is Naomi just like, I can't do one more day of Miss Bitter Pants over there. I don't know. My mind kind of goes there. Like, why did she want to choose this work? Clearly, she didn't have to get into it, but she asked if she could possibly. It's like she was creatively thinking of a way to contribute to the family. Creatively thinking, well, there's not any openings for harvesters, that they're booked up, because I got here at the beginning of it. They've already hired for the season, but maybe if I can gather up the things that are on the ground and put those in a bag, I could find a way to use them and make money to help my mother-in-law. I just wonder if that is the case with Ruth. You see a lot of proactivity there, which is something for us to nod at. Also, I see that her posture is positioned toward God. And that's where favor follows her. And this is where we see Boaz takes notice. The servant has taken notice, which that gets passed on to Boaz, who is the guy. He owns everything. It's his crop. He's the one they're gathering it for. They will all be paid out of what they gather from this crop. You understand that, right? So what they gather, it'll all go in together, and then everyone will be paid out of that season's harvest. That's why farming was such a big deal. It is such a big deal. Even farming, wherever it is, it's like the crop is everything. The bigger the yield, the bigger the payout, right? The better you do, the more customers you get essentially buying what you have harvested, what you planted, what you sowed, what you cared for. That's where your livelihood is coming out of. So we see Ruth has asked to be a part of that, but now because she's postured herself in a place that God has already told us we have the advantage of having this completed word. She doesn't, but remember, she's following Naomi's God now. So I have to think God is already whispering to her, because I know that I have a God that the Bible tells me runs after me on a daily basis with his goodness. He's like chasing me down. Wait, put this in your bag. You forgot the goodness. Wait. And that's how I look at Ruth. God has positioned her, and now he's going to lead her exactly to the portion of field to intersect with Boaz so that she can become the great-grandmother of King David after she has lost everything and started over. Because God is in the business of writing incredible stories to bring his favor and bring his kingdom to pass. I heard a phrase once that Tim and I have not forgotten. We say it as a joke all the time, but we say favor ain't fair. God's favor. Favor and grace is unmerited. Grace means unmerited favor. So it's something you did not earn, but you have this, there's this blessing on you, and it seems that things just work out, right? If somebody says, oh, that guy seems to have a lot of favor with the boss, you would know what that meant. If it's like you favor one kid over another, has anybody ever said that to you? Or, have your kids ever said that? You favor him. Think about it in that context. The favor of God is now solidly resting on Ruth, and he is working this out. So I want you to go back with me. We're going to close up. This is it at the end tonight. The last verse in chapter 1, the last half of it. So 122b, just the last half. Let's go back. And they arrived in Bethlehem at the beginning of barley harvest. At the beginning of the harvest season. Now, you have to ask yourself, when they started out from Moab, the three of them, Naomi, Orpah, and Ruth, it says that they started out on their journey, and then at some point they stopped, and Naomi was like, go home, you don't have to stay. How long did they stop? I don't know. What made Naomi decide then she was going? How long had the guys been dead before she decided she was going back home? All I know is God is directing all of those decisions, even if you're not aware that he's directing it. Have you ever looked back on your life and realized, oh my goodness, he was doing that? And he was doing that, and he opened this door, and he opened that door. Then he saved me from that. I thought I wanted to do that, but then that fell apart. And thank God I was back here, and I wasn't where I was trying to push to be. Have you ever looked back and seen God doing that? And you wonder, why did they leave when they left? Well, because God needed them to get there at the beginning of barley harvest, because Boaz was going to be on that field that day, that portion, that time to see that girl. And he needed her to get there so that that could be fulfilled. Now, that is something. It says they got there at the beginning of barley harvest. Tim and I in 2005 went to 20 years ago. I am aging myself telling all these old stories tonight. 20 years ago, we went out to LA to a conference called the Mosaic Church Conference. Mosaic Church is in LA, and at that time, it still is essentially. The fruit has borne out, and they are just growing and doing amazing things. Their pastor is Erwin McManus, who is a well-respected pastor. He's actually from Texas, and Tim had heard of him, and so we went to their conference. And we were, if you know the timeline, we had moved here in July of 2002, so we'd been here about 3 years, and we had 2 little babies, right? Jordan was 5, and Titus was 3. Silas was not here yet, and my mom came and kept the kids. And we went out basically to get inspired. See, how could we do it? Like, here we are. We're still in this school. We've been in this school about a year. And at that time, we thought this should be happening faster. Like, we've been here a year. We're restless. Like, we got to make something happen. It just seems like we're stalling out. Little did we know, 18 years later was when we were actually going to move in this place, right? We thought that was going to happen quick. Of course, we've learned so much about how God works at this point. But we get out there, and one of the sessions, Pastor Erwin, he's teaching, and it's really an afternoon session that not a lot of people were at, and he's speaking to just pastors in the room. So it was just primarily for pastors and their wives, and not all the attendees for this. There was probably 3,000 or 4,000 people that were at this conference. And he said something that we haven't forgotten, and Tim, as we got home last night from just a wonderful, beautiful day, beyond all of our expectations. Tim said, do you remember that? And he said, we're living in it. And what Pastor Erwin said was, everything you need is in the harvest. Everything you need is in the harvest. And don't you try to shortcut your way to the harvest, because the harvest comes when God is ready for it to come. And you just wait, and you do the work, and you plant, and you sow, and you plow, and you stay at it, and everything that you need is in the harvest. And as we were getting home last night, we had we already talked about baptisms, we had worship night, 2.5 hours. I was like, whew. I'm gonna tell you something right now. My left knee was hurting. I was like, I can't be jumping no more. I'm about to blow this knee out. This old ACL, she needs to hang in there. My feet were killing me. I was rolling them out on all the foam stuff. I was like, I feel like I've been through a war. I've been standing on these feet all day. Tim's like, you ain't no spring chicken. I'm like, okay, back boy, calm down over there. Now I'm probably gonna blow my back out. God, please, 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 please. But one of the things that we talked through as we sat there with the sirens going, we know we let out about when the sirens went off. How do you say the word derecho? How do you say that? Derecho. Okay. You should come say that in the microphone, because I sound ridiculous. That happened last night. Anybody? Everybody's still here. So, I don't think we had a tornado, but we had some straight line winds, blah, blah, blah. I feel like the weather here always dramatizes it just a little bit. They get us all worked up. The sirens go off. Then they're like, it's for the wind. We're like, oh, okay, it's not a tornado. All right. So we get home. All this has happened. We're trying to scrounge around for something to eat. It's about 10:15, and he brings this up. He says, do you remember that? Do you remember that we thought, yeah, just a couple of years, we'll be in the harvest. It'll be great. And if we could have had it when we wanted it, you know what? We would not have been ready. We would not be able to handle all the things that will come with the harvest. But rest assured, in order for us to have a worship night last night, just recently here on our media teams, and I'm going to brag for a moment, we have someone who walked in the doors who installed the LED screens at AT&T Stadium. Not kidding you. We have someone on our media team who currently runs, I believe I have this right, all the lighting at Toyota Stadium. Is that right? Nathan? Yes? Kind of. Lighting-ish. Look at me. I don't know what I'm talking about. Nathan is in this broadcast room back here like, close enough. It's fine. We have Katrina, who has worked in other places. She has an audiovisual degree, right? No, she's like, no. What is it? Yell it. She's like, no, I'm not going to. She has enough skill set that we're trusting her to learn everything, and we hired her to help us. And I'm going to tell you what we had last night was a team. We had a leader, Jordan, who really dreamed that all up. That whole stage in the middle, he just dreamed it all up. He knew exactly how he wanted to do it. We didn't even practice those songs. He's like, we'll just sing it like we're jamming. I was like, yeah, but how much of I Thank God are we doing? He's like, just wing it. It'll be fine. And it was. I'm like, okay, well, let's go. All right. But he dreamed it up. Then they worked really hard to make sure we had the people that we could do that. That's just one thing. That would be the story for everything. Had that happened like we wanted in 2007 or 8 or 12 or 15, we would not have been ready. But for us, for my life, for your life, for every single woman down the road, you know what is true because it's biblical? That everything you need is in the harvest. Let's pray. God, thank you for your time tonight. Thank you for your word. Thank you that it's exciting to read how you have provided through the ages, generation after generation, for all of those who would seek after you, that there is not one of us who is exempt from your goodness and your favor and your love as we chase after you. God, I pray that you would position us, that we would even position our hearts toward you, that we would see you working and know when we step foot in that portion of that field, your providence is waiting for us. And the person who is sitting here tonight and saying, my name is bitter, that you would answer every cry of her heart and you would begin to heal the places in her that feel so broken, no one could fill it. We know that you can, God. I'm asking you to do more than able, more than we ever thought you could do. We know that you are, God, and we're asking for that tonight. We ask all these things in your name. Amen.